Hello, I'm Penny Thornton and I'm talking astrology. On this video, I'm talking about the total solar eclipse of the 4th of December 2021. And this eclipse is at 12 degrees Sagittarius and 22 minutes. And it happens at 7:34 in the morning UTC time, or GMT in old money. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this eclipse, and I'm also going to address it sign by sign a little bit further along. But I want to give you a little picture of the eclipse at this particular time. Here it is, isn't this? Well, it's not the exact eclipse on the 4th of December, but it is what a lunar eclipse looks like. And here on my picture, it's taken from Venice and is particularly beautiful, because what you can see in this photograph is that you can definitely see the moon passing in front of the sun. And that's really, really important, because as the ancients would always look at the heavens and observe what is going on, the idea of the moon coming in front of the sun is almost as though there is a shadow crossing the sun. So something is occluded, and the sun, being that bright, energetic principle, being occluded or eclipsed, hidden, means there's something in the shadows here. Whether that means the events that happen around the time of an eclipse, there's something we're not seeing, or sometimes what happens, especially on a solar eclipse, is that something is revealed that has been hidden for a while. So we'll be dancing around those two particular themes. So as I mentioned a little while, let's come back to me again, that this eclipse being at 12 degrees 22 of Sagittarius, if you have anything in your chart, any planet or point at 12 degrees of that sign, it's going to be picked up by this eclipse. And that means it's going to generate some kind of event or experience that is very much linked to the planet or point where it's connected to. So for instance, if this solar eclipse connects with your Venus, it might mean there's a new love entering your life, or a new experience in terms of love and affection. And it can be money too, of course, using the very traditional meanings of what Venus represents. So a new source of income or something new happening to money. Whereas if, let's say, this total solar eclipse connects in some way to your Pluto, then you're going to be doing a lot of digging and delving, and events are going to take you to past experiences and bring out past memories and feelings. So that can be really pretty powerful. So you can certainly do that bit of homework on your own as you look at it. But of course, a little bit later on in the video, I'll take you through sign by sign. Now, on my videos here, what I try to do is open you up to the bigger world of astrology, so you start to see what a marvelous tool it is for understanding the events that happen to us and how humanity is progressing. We have a different lens, a kind of objective way of viewing events. And that's what I aim to do on these videos, is to give you a much bigger picture. But I also have to bear in mind that you do love it when I go sign by sign, which I am doing. But those of you who don't know, I do this week by week on my website, Astrolutely.com, on my videos. So if you haven't yet found my website, or you haven't yet explored the whole of the idea of your weekly video, 4 to 5 minutes just devoted solely to your sign and what's going on at the time, then by all means do that. And while I'm thinking about that, there's another thing that I think is quite important, and I'm noticing that a lot of you are really doing your best here, because if we want good astrology to grow and spread, and I think that is very important, the more you share my videos, perhaps with friends or people you think might be interested, or you subscribe, the better it really does promote astrology as perhaps we should be looking at it, not so much looking at it always as its predictive kind of quality. Okay, so let's move on. And I want to talk a little bit about this eclipse in terms of where you can see it and what really is happening. Now, on this occasion, on the 4th of December, you will only be able to see the full effects of this solar eclipse if you're in Antarctica. So there's not going to be a lot of people able to see it totally. But if you are in the southernmost tip of South America or Africa or New Zealand, north of New Zealand, of course, and well, actually south as well, come to think of it, I get a better picture of my geography in my head. And we also look at Australia. You should be able to see some kind of effect of this. And I often say when we look at the reality of something and then we think about its meaning in terms of the astrology, it makes a much more profound impact on us. Now, having said this idea that you'll be in Antarctica, if you can see it perfectly, this is because the way the eclipse path is working is around that southernmost tip of the globe, around that particular pole, which takes me to the idea of this eclipse being part of a series of eclipses. It's part of the Saros series 152. This is a southern series. And I want to tell you that the general feeling about this particular cycle and the eclipses that happened in it, occurred during it, including this one on the 4th of December, is that it's quite a joyful series, and that great benefits can come from, you know, when we look at that eclipse in terms of where it is in our chart, we're looking at something at the peak of its benefits, if you like. So for once, it has a very, you know, positive kind of essence. But I have also to say that this eclipse, like all the other ones since August, really, every new moon, and the solar eclipse on this occasion, has been connected to Uranus. And Uranus, of course, is the great game changer. And of course, eclipses themselves are game changers. And when you think about the effects of Uranus, which are often short, sharp, and shocking, Uranus brings about fabulous breakthroughs. In fact, the last solar eclipse that we had, in fact, coincided with not exactly the discovery of a new treatment that can be taken orally for COVID, but this was the big take-up by Britain, who actually approved it and are starting to use it. And it's quite a considerable breakthrough. So we need to think of that word breakthroughs with Uranus and apply that to yourselves as well. We need to also think of breakups and breakdowns. These are all good Uranus words. And if we think about all of those, it gives you some idea of what to expect around this time of the solar eclipse. But let's not forget also its rather good reputation for having some joy attached to it. And of course, we are in the sign of Sagittarius anyway. Sagittarius, the sign, comes in on the 22nd of November this year. And that's just a little bit, or actually it's on the day of Thanksgiving. So, you know, when we think about Sagittarius, the sign that is very jolly and optimistic and philosophical and wide-ranging and explorative and inspired in many ways, the sign itself. And we think that during the time Sagittarius is in season, so to speak, you know, we have Thanksgiving, we have lots of festivals, and we're all busy out there, Christmas shopping, looking at Christmas lights. And so it is a kind of festive season. And so in the middle of this, yes, indeed, we have our solar eclipse. But yes, another thing I really wanted to talk about too is that eclipses take place on the nodes. And the nodes are the point at which the path of the moon around the Earth, the orbit of the moon, connects with the ecliptic, which is the path of the sun. And so where they connect is the point at which the north and south node that's where they are. And in astrology, when we look at our horoscopes and we look at the north and south nodes, which have a lot to do with our destiny, and actually, you know, you can find out a little bit more about this in my new book, The Guide to Interpretation, just come out in print. Because really we look at the nodes and it tells us where we're going to, what our destiny is. and our karma, our past, being the South Node. And the reason this is all tied up with eclipses, of course, is that eclipses too are considered very fateful. Fateful events tend to cluster around the time of eclipses. And I would certainly say events that come out of left field are often the lot of events around the time of a solar eclipse. So let me take you to the chart now so that we can see what's going on with this eclipse. And I've taken our perspective from Sydney, because as you can see, if you know a little bit about astrology, the symbol for the sun and the moon in that 3 o'clock position is above the horizon, which means the sun has not yet set. So you will be able to see this effect of the moon passing in front of the sun and obliterating some of its light. And if you can see, I've also drawn a little red line from the sun and the moon to planet Uranus, the planet that's about 9 o'clock in the chart. And that's to point out this effect that Uranus brings, adds its influence into this eclipse by bringing something totally unexpected into the arena. And of course, eclipses themselves, I've said before, are kind of game changers. So let's have a little look at what's going on at this particular time, the time that the eclipse is set in. And I think we can probably see, if we look at Mercury, which is just above the sign of the sun, at 15 degrees of Sagittarius, it's making its way to the planet Neptune, and it's going to be exact on the 7th of December. And a few days later, on the 12th, the sun is going to square Neptune. And when we have a planet connecting to one of these outer planets, it brings out the whole of all the properties of that particular planet. And also on the 1st of December, Neptune turns stationary direct. So for all that time, late November, coming into the early part of December, we've got a stationary kind of Neptune. And as I say, planets are more powerful when they're in their stationary phase. That means the properties of Neptune, which are both magic and divinity, and it's a mystical planet and it's inspirational, takes us out of ourselves, connects us soul to soul. All these really beautiful kind of things really come from Neptune or are represented by the planet Neptune. But so too are things like deception and betrayal and loss and confusion and chaos. So there's a kind of maximizing effect in that late November, early December period. So we can expect sort of more situations to confound us and to be a little bit strange, and for us to be in danger of being misled. But also, if our hearts are open, my goodness, there is that beautiful experience of true heart expansion, which is also offered to us by the planet Neptune. But last word on Neptune, don't believe everything you're told. And that goes for the government and the news providers, as well as what your best friend tells you. It might be true, it might not be. So probably better to check it out before you put thought into action. So also what's happening in this period is there is a Venus-Pluto conjunction on the 11th, just roughly a week after the solar eclipse. And if you look at my chart here, you can see Venus in the sort of 2 o'clock position, moving closer to Pluto. That's a very, very powerful, intense, profound kind of influence. And remember, I talked right at the very beginning about if that eclipse connects with your natal Pluto, then you're going to be doing a lot of digging and delving, and a lot of past memories, past experience, feelings are all going to be sort of triggered, really, for you to process and for you to transform them into something that is easier to live with or more productive in your current life or the life you're moving into. What is important about this Venus-Pluto aspect, and we might also want to look at things that are happening with the various economies in the world at this time, because there could be some very interesting news about what's going on, whether it's related to growth, whether it's related to things going bust, All sorts of things might be relevant to the global economy at this point. But what is happening is as Venus moves closer to Pluto, about halfway through December, Venus turns retrograde. So she's then going to make her way back to Pluto. And then, of course, in January, we're going to have her making her way back over Pluto again. Third time lucky, third time's a charm. So we have what I was talking about in my recent video about Mercury doing the same thing 3 times, that you often have a situation that is going this way and that until finally it makes its third and final pass, and then that situation is done. It's revealed itself in all aspects. And so with Venus, as I said again, we're looking at finance and we're looking at love, just as a very, very basic principle. So let me come now and have a look at what this solar eclipse means in terms of sign by sign. So here we go with Sagittarius. Well, to have a new moon in your sign is always a sign of a new beginning in terms of personal life. So it can even affect your appearance. So often we look in the mirror and think, you know what? I think I need to change something about myself. Or maybe you have a platform in life and you want to change your image. That's something we might do with a new moon in our sign. But when we think about a total solar eclipse, my goodness, that means transformation with a capital T. So we will be looking to do something very different with our personal circumstances if we're Sagittarians. But of course, that element of fate that comes to it means that perhaps such things are inspired by completely random events. Often I think when there is something like a solar eclipse around, which is very much an awakening, we often do have ideas that suddenly come to us. And I think if that happens to you, then this is a time to really begin to map out what you think of as a new beginning for yourself. So if we look at Gemini, the opposite sign, then that solar eclipse is in your 7th house. And the 7th house is all about relating to other people, the effect of other people in your life. So somebody is going to have a big effect on your life. Now, does that mean they're going to tell you something which opens your eyes to new possibilities? Does it mean there's somebody new coming into your life and you're going to partner up with them, whether for work or whether for romance? Does it mean perhaps the joining of yourself to a company or an organization, getting involved with that? It may do as well, but it's new. You're going to do that, and it's going to mark a new chapter for you in terms of, where you partner up with people and how you relate to people generally. And of course, let's not forget that fated quality whenever we're looking at an eclipse of any description. If we come to Pisces, then that total solar eclipse is in your 10th house. So we're looking at your place in the world. Now, I think that's a good way to say this, because not everyone has a career, which you can look to and say, oh, this is going to affect my career and my life direction in the sense of my vocation. Well, it may for a great many Pisceans, but not for everybody. What it also means is what your place in the world is. In other words, that can be your status, but it can be your role in terms of being a parent or being a daughter or a son. It can be that kind of role. But if we think about how we want to be out in the world, then that solar eclipse has something to do with a new dimension or a new aspect of our future direction. Whether that's something that you get behind yourself, it happens, maybe you've already strategized that you're going to do something in regard to all of this around that first week of December, or it may come about just like, a bolt of lightning, suddenly and unexpectedly. Either way, we're looking at a new chapter for your place in the world. If we come to Virgo, and that's the opposite sign, we had this total solar eclipse in the 4th house. That's the roots of life. It's where you've come from. So it's your family. It's your base, your home. It's also the foundation of the future. So a solar eclipse is something new going on here. Is it a new set of furniture? Well, I think it's a bit more important than that. So it could be that you start to use your home base for different purposes. And, when we look at our home and we give it a new look, it makes us feel different because we're in our home pretty well every day. So we give our home a new look, or we see our home with a new pair of eyes, then that can make a difference to our whole way of viewing life and a whole lot of other things too. But of course, it can indicate some really big changes coming into your family or into your home life. So maybe this is indications of an unexpected arrival. Is this to do with marriage or birth? It could be. Or are you suddenly going to buy a property? Are you suddenly going to move home? Or something like that. This is all centered on the home, but let's not forget it's the foundation of the future. So also things that come to you and you can see that it's going to make a difference to your future. That's also part and parcel of this total solar eclipse. Now, if we come to Aries, we're in the 9th house of far horizons. So the implications of the events around the time of this eclipse have big connotations, big ramifications into your future. It may take you out into the world in terms of travel. Maybe there's a big journey planned. It doesn't have to be planned tomorrow, but maybe it's next year, but the planning will take place. And so you'll be going far. But that's also a metaphor for going far in so many other ways. Maybe you need to spread your ideas, get a bigger platform for the things you believe in. Maybe it means desiring to get more qualifications to go back to university. Maybe it means you want to get legal in some aspect, make something legal. And I often think of this 9th house in its connection to publishing, that the idea of copyright, bringing something into being and your imprint is on it. It can be very much to do with the 9th house. So all those things could be very relevant to Aries, a new publication, a new platform, a big journey, either in experience or in reality coming up. Now, the opposite sign, Libra, you have this total solar eclipse in your 3rd house. So we're very much in the neighborhood within the community. So this isn't about journeys from one side of the globe to the other. It's more about your local environment. But these journeys can also be very important. The journeys you take to meet people, the journeys you take to find out what is going on with your community, has a lot to do with what's going on in your world. So information reaching you around the time of the eclipse could be really, really important. It will be important to the way you think about certain things and certain people. It may even inspire you to do a little blog or to get writing to your government minister, or maybe even to joining a proactive group. There's something about communities here. And also we have this idea of brothers and sisters attached to this area. So does this solar eclipse also mean some very important news related to a sibling? Now, if you've tuned out right now, because like me, you don't have brothers and sisters, what you will have are friends who are like brothers and sisters to you. And so the idea of a solar eclipse in this area may have a lot to do with somebody like that. So something happening to them, something you do with them, something related to them is going to, well, mark a new opening somewhere. It's going to take you in a new direction. So if now we come to Capricorn, when we look at Capricorn, we're in the 12th house. This, what's happening here is that the solar eclipse is taking place in your preceding sign. So we're in the 12th house. And this is a very shadowy area of the horoscope. So any awakening or any new understandings are stirring within your unconscious mind. So you'll have powerful dreams, or you'll get a very strong sense impression, a conviction about something like, you know what, I think this is going to happen, or I think I should do this, or I think I've got to act on my instincts here. And of course, that's a very powerful thing. And I think when we are very activated by our strong intuitions, we're empowered by them as well. Now, normally, of course, in the 12th house, you want to say, wait until the sun has moved out of the 12th house before you go into action, because you're in the area of shadows. But, you know, sometimes obeying the message of a solar eclipse, especially if it comes through dreams and intuitions, is the right thing to do as soon as you get it. And I think too, any of you Capricorns who are thinking, you know, what is my vocation? Where do I need to be? I think I've got a bigger purpose than, you know, what I'm doing. Then this solar eclipse is going to be very, very important for that. If we come now to your opposite sign, Cancer, then we're looking at the solar eclipse in the 6th house. So just on a very peripheral, mundane level, we could be looking at a new job or a new system at work or a new workplace or new technology that, you know, is coming into where you work and how you work. So we just look at something new like that. But I think the meaning is a little deeper than that, because what we're really looking at the 6th house, in as much as I just said to Capricorn, if you're thinking, what is my vocation? I'm here for a purpose. What is it? There's a similar sort of effect in the 6th house as well, in the sense of I should be doing something, but it's often translated in terms of my fellow man. What can I do to help my fellows? What should I be doing to do something that really enables and helps others? And that's very important. And again, coming back to a peripheral level on that solar eclipse in the 6th house, has a lot to do with systems, the systems you run your life by, and your health system. So that solar eclipse can mean big changes here, new things going on that mean changes in the system. So I come to my last group, and I'm going to look at Taurus. And for you, this total solar eclipse takes place in the 8th house. Now, this is a very mysterious area. It has its sort of superficial level, which can do with financial relations. And you have financial relationships with your credit card companies, the banks, your partner, if you share finances, the bank, all sorts of things come under the banner heading of financial relationships. But it's also a little bit more than that in this area of the horoscope. It's about what we receive and how we receive it, what we get from others. And this can also translate into the area of sex and intimacy. So it is about that opening to another person and the conduit it leads to understanding ourselves and relating to others and allowing people into our innermost recesses. So that solar eclipse could shake up a lot of things. And yes, on a very traditional, practical level, we could maybe look at a bonus or an inheritance or a settlement, you know, yeah, that might be. But let's look a little deeper and see just how much our relationship with money, other people's money, how open we are to the dialogue, both emotionally, sexually, and financially with other people. That solar eclipse is going to make a difference. So we move to Scorpio and we look at this total solar eclipse in the 2nd house. On the surface, we're looking at what you have, you know, your possessions, what you've built over the years in terms of what's in the bank, your money, but also all sorts of other things that you've been building, and they represent what you have accumulated during your life. So on a very simple level, we could be looking at a new source of income so that you've got a new job or you've got a way of earning more money. It could mean that a new financial arrangement is beginning, and we're all making a lot of those at the moment. It's the time of year we often do, but this could be big and important and make a really big difference. But we're also looking here, I think, at what you give of yourself in a funny kind of way, in terms of if if your sun sign or your first house is sort of, this is me, this is what I look like, this is how people see me. When you come to the second house, you know, this is what I'm about. This is what I have. This is what I'm about. And so this solar eclipse will change something in regard to that. And it can be quite random. Again, I use this idea of awakening, not just because it's a solar eclipse, but also because this solar eclipse is hooked up to Uranus, the awakener. So there's change and unexpected circumstances that contribute to this idea of an awakening. So my final two signs, we look at Leo, and this total solar eclipse is in the 5th house. And this is your self, really. And in as much as we just looked at a minute or two ago about what you have, you know, I have, and now we're looking at what I can offer up to the world, which is why it's a sign of creativity or a house of creativity. It's also procreativity. So it can have a lot to do with pregnancy, childbirth, and your offspring. So maybe the solar eclipse is signaling the birth of, you know, someone close to you. It doesn't have to be your giving birth, but it could be. But it may be that you're going to become a godparent to that child, or it's going to be significant because it will change your relationship with your friend or whatever it is. So the solar eclipse signaling a birth of some description can be quite literal, but it's also a metaphor for what else you're bringing into the world. So it'd be a very, very powerful time to start a new enterprise, or to have somebody approach you and say, do you want to do this? You know, use your creative spirit in order to bring this together, this project, this idea. That could be in there too. So if we come to the final sign, we look at Aquarius here, and we think about the 11th house of the horoscope too, which is all about you in collaboration with others. So if in the 5th house, we find our own kind of creative muse, and it's all about me, 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 me. If we get up to the 11th house, it's more about what can we do together? What can we do as a team, as humanity? How can we get together? And it can be about enterprise as well. So we could be looking at some new collaboration in the business world. We could be looking at a new social project with friends. But we could also take it another notch and see that this 11th house has a lot to do with the higher self. So maybe at this point of that total solar eclipse, we're getting much more attuned to what our higher self would do in certain situations and what it is that our higher self desires. And again, we bring humanity back into this, and very much like, how can I help my human relations, humanity itself? We get a similar kind of expression here in the 11th house with wanting to join organizations that promote benefits and care for and look after the planet or certain things. So it's really, I suppose, rebooting your humanitarian spirit, Aquarius. So that's all 12 signs. And of course, as I reminded you, you can hear an audio as well, sign by sign, which will cover a lot more. It's always different. And so we come to my final thought for the day, and not the day, the video. And it was something that came to mind, actually, as I was, again, putting together this video in my note form. And I'm always going to pay attention to that because it means it's relevant. And what came to mind was this very, very famous statement by President John F. Kennedy. And it's this, and we all know it so well. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And I thought to myself, this is so relevant to the now, because we are also in the embrace of that Saturn-Uranus square, which is really and truly about the restrictions that we've had placed on us by the government in the sense of lockdowns, the infringements of our freedoms, which of course Uranus always wants to be free. And so we've had a real dance going on with this in so many different ways. And of course, we have had circumstances imposed on us by governments and circumstances. That's what's happened. But really and truly, what we want to get at here, and I've used this word accountability, taking accountability, doing it for ourselves. And when we look at the COP26, which as I'm speaking to you right now, recording this video, is happening. And we all think and we want to make our governments aware that, you know, time is running out, we have to do something. And so this idea of taking responsibility, connecting, you know, what can you do for your country is in some part, if you like, getting active, proactive and protesting, getting our voice out there. That's one thing. But I think what it means more is making our own personal stand in all of this. I mean, it's all very well thinking about what China may have to do to, you know, get rid of its carbon load, that we in a way do that individually as well. And we might say, what point is it if I keep recycling my plastic when no one else in the neighborhood is doing that? Why should I bother? Well, yes, you should bother. And I think it's each of us walking our talk matters, and it contributes to the whole. And I think, you know, when we're actually doing something that's worthwhile, we do feel a sense of that we matter and that what we do matters. And I think that's so important. So that's my thought to carry you through the next couple of weeks. And thank you for listening, watching, and I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Bye for now.